높은 캔다지.
아, 야, 그린스나 로야 보용이 강의되게
저를 그러 됐어. 아,
강의되게
나 살때 그냥 수수사. 기색인다고.
All right.
다시 될래.
Could everybody hear Geshe clearly?
다 들었어요.
I think the video is spotlighted now. So could everybody hear Geshe-la's voice clearly? Give me a thumbs up.
다시 될래.
And you can hear me clearly? Okay, great. And it looks like we're both visible. So. It's good? Okay, great. Yeah, so let's get this show on the road.
야, 다 강가 다시 될래. 드네. 다 가로서 니빠 요가 강가로 요 앞에 제도 리라 때네. 사회야 보이 시기반 노지 다 간돌래가 대책이 와레스.
So, Tashi Dele, greetings to everybody. So, in terms of the task that we are engaged in, we are going forward engaging in the process of nourishing with water and with fertilizer our positive potential.
다 대시게 된다래라 대시 대용다 니가게 대시 좀 많이 봐 대시 땜버지게 된다 달래가 지요레스.
And so when we speak of happiness, it's important to be clear here. We can speak of both temporary and ultimate happiness. And really what we're aiming for is that ultimate or lasting happiness.
어떤 나라서 어느 새 거로 놀러서는 분들 사고를 다 뭐지 짜치 뭐야 봐 노지 지당으로서 간갈
So we can think that this positive potential is a little bit like a precious gem, which is in the house of our mind. However, it's somewhere in the basement and it is covered in dust or something like that, so we can't identify it.
다 시기 대설에서는 수지도 전시 선바소가 다 매그 매돌로 따와는지 고소 통과요 아이자 대가로서 맞지테 다 인엘레가 제기데 나로서 체크요 알스.
So then of course the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, they sort of konso 상기당 장수 sempa metodi kandeshikre.
그래서 음악에 통과요 와서 니바자 침보되지 노노노지.
So the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, they understand that we possess this quality, right, which can blossom into a beautiful flower. So they can tell us that, right? But it is we ourselves who have to uncover it and nourish it so that it can grow.
다 렌데스야 대처하신 뭐 이자 레강인에 대체기도 소소소로 맞잖아. 그래서 따다 레가제니다 드리 차수돼서 도요 말이야.
So when we speak about karma or cause and effect, we talk about the agent, the doer, which is ourselves. So if we do not engage in the process of uncovering and nourishing those seeds, we will not be able to come to a result.
다 드리지레스 다 대원 니바데 들어가서 니바지 말에 로지에 강가를 펴게 편바 타주저 도게 다 니바 잘라서 뭐뭐가로서 본디 놀어요 아레스.
And when we talk about these potentials, they're not just any kind of ordinary potential. It's really the potential that if we nourish it to reach a state where we can lead not only ourselves, but also others to an ultimate state of lasting happiness.
다 때깔에 집어 깔에 자 리가를 집어 잡혀도요 말은 리템보 sembakibo 다 드릴라 때네 다 드니 소속으로 조티소 것을 해래 진이신이다 노게야그레스.
So in order to do that though, we need first to take care of our physical and mental state so that it is stable, and then we need to apply our body, speech, and mind into the activities of the three trainings in hearing, contemplation, and meditation.
손지게 또 멀리 깔에 뭐 자 리조워쇼워쳐 할레비더니 대차네라 또바시 마토네더니 부모지가 그렇게
제
단데 나가리나 심부터 니바침부터는 요 앞에는 리포토지 전에 tellatene 전에 또바시 요로진두아스.
So we should understand when we talk about taking our body, right? Taking care of our body. The classic example of this is Lord Buddha, who engaged in ascetic practices for years, right? And as a result of that ascetic practice, his body became extremely emaciated. And despite all that ascetic practice, he noticed that there was not realization that was coming forth. And so realizing that then, when he was one day by a river, a woman offered him a bowl of rice, and he accepted that, right, to restore his health. And after that, he was able to cultivate well.
어다 데레다 땡이네 버게 크크야 보다이나 너이노로라 땡안조 리포다 보야 보자기야 릴 또요기야 어셈바기보 요기 비타지셀
So if we look at these stories in the sutras and we apply it to ourselves, what lesson can we take? Well, first of all, that we need to take care of our physical health, right? Our body. We need to take care of our physical health or our body. And then on that basis, we're going to have the physical and mental health to be able to work towards that ultimate happiness. So understanding this, then, let us on that basis take a moment to place our body and mind in a state of stable peace. So whatever sort of unhelpful feelings, doubts, or stress may be present in our mind, just imagine that they are like waves that dissolve back into the surface of the ocean when it is calm. So just like those waves, which at one point may be very high and prominent, they gradually dissolve back into the surface of the ocean. In the same way, any distracting thoughts of our mind, if we just leave them be, we'll see there's nothing solid and pinpointable, and they will dissolve back into the surface of the mind. And think that our mind is like this ocean in other ways too, right? It's vast, it is deep, and when things are clear and when things are still, it is clear and unencumbered. And also think that within this vast, deep space of the ocean, within the ocean are contained many, many different things, many, many different objects, including very, very precious jewels. But we need to be able to identify and locate those if we are to benefit. In the same way, our mind possesses many, many different thoughts and many different latencies or potentials. We need to identify the jewels within our mind so that we can utilize those. So by activating these positive potentials within my mind, one of the things that I'll be able to cultivate is an outlook of mercy, of empathy that is really concerned for the well-being of others.
슬리나야 다 대노지 다시 와서 이 손바지.
And then on that basis, develop an attitude of loving concern or affectionate love that has that same feeling of closeness and wish to benefit that we have for the person who we are closest to, who we are most connected to in this lifetime.
근데 소마 노지 지용하지다. 샤이데 달라스. 너는 소와 제치데 당요 손바지.
In order to be able to have the blessings to uncover these precious mind jewels, then I'm going to visualize the objects of refuge and seek their blessing. 아니, 간소 가든 집에 가볼라 되네. 간소 벌치 메버스와이기네 소 니드와 칙 셰럽닝 볼라테네 칙 생게 도몰라테네. 된소 니 교기레스 칙 담가지.
말은 다시라니 뭐 집은데.
셰럽닝 보지고니. 버스.
등가니까 자시야게 다시 말씀을.
So I was just asking Geshe about, there's two obstacle dispelling practices embedded within the Heart Sutra. You'll see as we go through the text. But I was asking Geshe, there's two of those. So how do you do the two of them together? And he said, yeah, this is actually a point that he and I have to discuss. So we'll just do the simple obstacle dispelling prayer without the lion face stikini this time. And we'll begin just with one recitation of the praise to Shakyamuni Buddha. I'll say 3 swift recitations of the praise to the Buddha. Tenpa chomden de
Geshe sheba rajomba yondaba dube sonje riba no shasu denba dewa sheba jiden chemba sheba ndewe kalo jowa lana meba ladon mino tenpa sonje joden de peja shaja dewa la janta lo jeda jaso jo Tenpa chomden de sheba rajomba yondaba dube sonje riba no shasu denba dewa sheba jide jemba sheba ndewe kalo jowa lana meba ladon mino jidemba sonje joden de bejawa shaja duwa la chanza lo jide shasu jo Tenpa chomden de sheba rajomba yondaba dube sonje riba no shasu denba dewa sheba jiden jemba sheba ndewe kalo jowa lana meba ladon mino tenpa sonje joden de bejawa shaja dewa la shasu jide shasu jo
So we'll do the Heart Sutra, beginning with the praise to the perfection of wisdom on page 8, and then continuing to page 9. So we'll do this praise in Tibetan and then the rest of the Heart Sutra in English. Mazanje me shira
Baruja Mashe Manga Noki Ngowo Nyen Soso Ranri Yishi Jaya Ma Deso Jai Yumla Shando
I prostrate to the 3 noble, rare, sublime ones. Thus did I hear at one time. The Bhagavan was dwelling on Massive Vulture's mountain in Rajagriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then, through the power of Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra. Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly behold beholding those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form, emptiness is not other than form, form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomena. There is no I element, and so on, up to and including no mind element, and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the endpoint of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly, completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering should be known as truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared. Taya ta gate gate para samgate bodhi swaha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage, it is like that. It is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan having thus spoken, the Venerable Sharad Vatiputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, and those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan.
Sorry,
this guy. So, nganso sengi doma drogirbe. Nganso tambo di shirab nimpo chikpo wa. Okay, so we'll do the extensive dispelling of hindrances according to the Heart Sutra. I and all surrounding sentient beings take refuge in the Buddha, take refuge in the Dharma, take refuge in the Sangha. We prostrate to the Great Mother Prajñāpāramitāhṛdaya, surrounded by all the children and the assemblies of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions. By depending on my prostrations to all of you, may these words of truth be actualized. In the past, the Deva King Indra dispelled the Maras by reflecting on the profound meaning of the wisdom gone beyond, and reciting the profound words in daily recitation. In that same way, I also reflect on the profound meaning of the Great Mother Prajñāpāramitāhṛdaya and recite the profound words in daily recitation. May all diseases, spirit possessions, bad conditions, all negative directions, which happen due to past karma and immediate conditions be dispelled. May they become non-existent. May they be pacified. So what Geshe has just recited is this: may the host of 80,000 obstacles be pacified. May we be free from harmful conditions to Dharma. May all excellences be in accord with the Dharma. And may auspiciousness and perfect happiness be here right now. So
Sengi Zuan go to Maswas Nasa, you are what they are, Tangata Paranga Titani. Akasamara the Shasa Garwa, Kasaji Masa Tagas Dovaja. Hit this out of Chiari.
Ale, Kala Chipe Chupa,
Kala Chipe, Domaya to Doji Duapola, Nisa Candizola, Shanta, Lo, Akasamara, Jadar, Samaraya, Pisagartamo.
Ale,
and Legenate Tangatangatin.
Ale,
and Legend of Bajakar, so that has it.
Mare, Conso, the Sherab Nimpola. Okay, so now I know what Geshe wants to do. I'm sorry, I was very unclear about that. Sengi Doma again, Sengi Doma. So what we'll do in the future is we'll do the prayer of the Heart Sutra and then the prayer to the lion face, the kini, with the two mantras. Okay. So now we'll go to the mandala offering. So ji pu
Geshe me do do ra le je ni te je wa song ji je la me den bo wa yin ro go nang
da
je la je wa jo yi gu ru ra na men da la ko na ya da ya mi.
And refuge and bodhicitta.
Sanje je don zo je jo no la jang je ba do da ne ja zo da ge ji je ji be zo no je ro la be sanje ro wa jo sanje je don zo je jo no la jang je ba do da ne ja zo jo da ge ji ye be zo no je ro la be je sanje ro wa jo song je je dong zu je ju nan la chong je ba de da ne xia se je da ge ji yu be zu nan je ro la be song je zhe wa ju. 뭐야, 단데 맞지? 다 가져라봐 놓지. 다 개와 뇨추와 나는 로도만로 개와 아니 또 치면 로도만로 세대한테 조조 당하로서 용인 주에서 좀마솔 그네라 투바레스.
So as Geshe discussed a little bit last time, whether a merit is something that is slight or whether a merit is something that is vast and powerful, this very much depends on having the activities complete in the beginning, the middle, and the end.
다 드니 띵야 때 할레비 같이 뭐지 예사 가디노 수지 치소인 거니 딱 그런 파템 보소야 다 손세 된 좋아 침보도 야레스.
And so this is actually one of the purposes of reciting the Sangye Chotsokma, the refuge and bodhicitta prayer. It's really to create kind of a momentum behind that motivation. It makes a big difference.
다 때지만 치유유래 되네 된다 다 뒤는 원래 강가 뒤는 파디 디존아요 저요 바다 할레비 같이 못 쓰고 야레스.
So this refuge and bodhicitta prayer, right, it's only 4 lines. It is few in words, but in fact, the meaning of the entirety of the path can in some ways be considered to be within it.
다게 지소 지비 세노지에서 노지치를 대화하라와서 이나 근디게 된 저와도네 다게 지소 지비 소노지에서는 저와도네라 아니 소니가 요바지 다 보게 손은 두고 야레스.
So you won't see it in the version we have, right? Because this is a refuge which is made for the teachings, right? Which is through the merit of listening to the Dharma. But normally we say through my engagement in generosity and other perfections, or my practice of generosity and so forth. Geshe is saying that these words should actually be switched out on the recommendation of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and it should say through my practice of the 2 collections, of the 2 accumulations.
다 때치도 탐바 자게 지소 지비 소노지사 소니가 도거요 이니 미제 다 닌디와스 디노로 텔라 소노 야보 도네라 다 니네테 단적 주사 가와요 메테야 보다 그야레스.
And we'll also note that when we recite this prayer of refuge and bodhicitta, that we see I go for refuge. May I become a Buddha. So each time that word I appears, we're actually supposed to contemplate selflessness.
나로서 니까라 기워용도 마요. 어느 오다 보게 그냥 가리 이나 여보용도 마요 세하데 나 세대하데 따동로 보게 투디하레스.
So a lot of what's behind whether we're going to experience more happiness in our life, whether we're going to be able to remain more calm in our life, relates to how we perceive and how we understand this self. This is very important.
어다 단지 말이 바티가 날 따도 괜찮지 요할테네 디가 간졸 페도요 뭐버서기 요할세 요할레스.
So because of ignorance grasping at the self, right, we have a quite confused perception of this I, but there's a paradox because it said that in some instances that ignorance grasping at the self can also be beneficial.
어다 간조 코알시아 와타 하도 말시아 텔로 오단지 말이 바티가 오로 바치 뭐지서 요할레스. 아니 그게 So
for example, in the initial scope, when we are trying to achieve a higher rebirth in the Deva or the human realms, this ignorance grasping at the self can actually be an assist to that. However, when it comes to our kind of final attainment, which requires a perception of the way that things really are, their ultimate mode of abiding, this ignorance grasping at the self creates kind of a confused appearance related to the I. And so ultimately, we need to use wisdom to uproot that.
오야 다 도미 샤이가라 다 끊어야 보치시 다 예서
So-
비트네 레레디아 이스
So then at the
네네. 그래서 자 그래서 자기가 가르도 생기도 맞춰도 차소도 넣지 쇼긴도 대 말해서 세요 근데 쇼로게 지마도 못돼요 다 끊어야 보치시 다 예스 캔사
So we're
소소
going-
때 주저서는 더 돼야
So we're going to bring forth a motivation for the practice. And in order to do this, let us put our body and mind in a relaxed state.
유아지 찬용 받아 레레 이거는 야보속이 손바치
By placing the body and mind in a calm and relaxed state, we bring the four elements within the body into balance.
유아지 찬용 발라테네 노게 자 류다 가르 이나다 파프게 야보도 어느 시와 레레 요 손바치
So through the four elements coming into balance, then our channels and the prana, the wind that moves within them, all of these will come to a state of equilibrium.
shombato niji ge zawa ji zo ji de da senje sile ina yo de yi de gong da ya de ren de sombe tu ne ane yong shomba ya bo ji si da shus
So understanding that this attitude of what I translate as loving concern, but sometimes translated as affectionate love, this is what underpins our realizations of love and compassion. Try to develop that feeling of closeness to beings and seeing them with affection, seeing them as attractive and lovable.
awe ri shoji sembe ri sonji ge ri yo bi chan da wa yin na yo senje sile da wa yin na yin da yi de gong wa ji ma do yi de mo gong wa ji zhong me son ba den bo
And think the reason that I should see all of these beings with loving concern, with affectionate love, is because they possess the potential for liberation, the potential to become a bodhisattva, and the Buddha nature, the potential for enlightenment. As all beings possess their potential, there is not one to whom I am not connected. We're the same.
so so ko la ye bi ka la yo de shin yo sa ge ya ane kale te la te ne ta tu ge de shin yo sa ge ji jil so no to no yo senje se yin na yo da yi de gong wa ji ma do yi de mo gong wa ji zhong me so much
Think that all of the happinesses within samsara arise from others. In a similar way, my achievement of the final happinesses of liberation and enlightenment depends on others. And with this awareness as a foundation, hold all sentient beings within this attitude of loving concern.
다 다리 고가 야수 소소로 야이자 파니까게 되시 타두게 되시 강가 파 제도야게 다 보게 내가 제비티세 자치 뭐지 숨바지.
And think, I am going to today have this very precious opportunity to be able to build on these potentials and work towards a state where I can accomplish not only my own final happiness, but lead all beings to ultimate happiness. This is very fortunate.
대용화 라스트네 수지 마토바를 타만데 대이자다 강가세대야데 대다게 제도 수지 토바 소기 소미토네 다 전주셨어.
The only way to very effectively actualize the happiness of self and others is through achieving Buddhahood. Therefore, in order to liberate all beings, may myself, actualize the state of Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, complete and perfect enlightenment.
뭐야 저거지. 와다가조 야보제바 얘는 루덴요 타심바 예덴요 타심마 다 버긴도 토야가 다 로던디 고가 야보지라데 야레스.
So this is a path through understanding this meditation, right? This is a path through which we can achieve our own state of complete welfare and through which we can work for the complete welfare of other beings.
오다 든디게 든요 로데 자 첨보전에 다 소소가 가빈원이 로덴로 그 야레스.
So seeing this path as something precious that leads to this result, right? We want to proceed joyfully along this path.
저돌린다고 제전다 뭐뭐야 때는 쪼쪼데 소소가 레바 고시토야 세 고시네 다 시라쁘게 지토야 다 내가 쪼데레스.
So, of course, we understand, right, that there are many qualities that we want to sort of develop, which are kind of like the water and the fertilizer. But we should understand that the main thing that we need to actualize to reach this final result is wisdom.
또 레카리나 레녜파자라 게 레카리나 녜파자지를 그런 것도 지요하스 다 이나요 다 시라시에 토소나 사모투만이라고 저러서나 다 레녜바르질 다 보게 거야가 다 추드죠 바데 데레디아레스.
So, of course, when we talk about karma, right, we talk about wholesome and unwholesome karma. And a lot of the practices of Buddhism are aimed at avoiding the accumulation of the unwholesome, also purifying that unwholesome and cultivating virtues. But we should understand that if we are able to practice wisdom, in particular, the realization of profound emptiness, that this is absolutely the most powerful means of purification.
하고서라와 오다시 뭐 피시라 피도보 가제 여버쳐바이나 아니 레코 니바지로와스 니바지를 보게 되대야레스 다 니바텔 천로야면 니바데 고출라노야르마도 콜레가 제토야면 되와스.
So we can understand that when we bring forth wisdom, what this does is it hinders karma. If we understand karma as a mere potentiality, as a potentiality within our mind, if we rob that potentiality or that seed of any moisture, of any nourishment, it will not be able to sprout a result. This is how the wisdom functions.
저만 논데 놀아요. 거의 타마요아레스. 거의 타마 가딘 것 중에서나 사회 매이 집안 오지. 다음에 가디 라바이는 다 거의 타만 것 중에 아레스.
So the Pramanavartika, the treatise on valid cognition, says that samsara has an end. When does one posit the end of that samsara? It is posited when those seeds of potentiality are burned by the fire of realization of selflessness.
오다 땡 안주 비가가게야. 오늘 뽑아시 줘야.
So when we hear that, right, that is something that we should enjoy hearing, and that is something that should bring forth a brave or courageous attitude to practice. So there's a line in the Bodhisattvacaryāvatāra where Shantideva says something like, all of the branch practices were merely spoken for the arising of wisdom, which means that the teachings on the other perfections, such as ethics, concentration, patience, and so forth, ultimately these were spoken so that one could bring forth wisdom. So all of these texts that Geshe was pointing to behind us, so this is the Kongyur, right? The collected discourses of the Buddha. There's many thousands of pages. So all of these thousands of pages of teachings were propounded in order for us ultimately to bring forth wisdom. We can think like that. So all of our problems, we understand that this arises due to the negative or unwholesome karma that we've accumulated. Wisdom is able to prevent that from bringing forth a result, right?
This one, Shonji Samba Papa Liale, Sona Nemo Yari, Le Yari, then Colleca Chairman do Carres Tumaning as a two side to live Colleca Chatom to us.
So it is said that an Arya Bodhisattva, right? He or she still has traces of negative karma, those potentialities. They still have traces of the afflictions, but karma and the afflictions are not able to harm that Arya Bodhisattva. Why? Because the Arya Bodhisattva has had that direct realization of emptiness. Yeah.
And they try to
So it is even said that for these high-level Arya Bodhisattvas, attachment actually is no longer a poison. It can be like a medicine, which helps them complete certain practices.
And so
that's the reason also that the Arya Bodhisattva, who has achieved that path of seeing, where he or she has had that direct realization of emptiness, no longer needs to work at cultivating the antidotes to anger, attachment, and so forth, right? Because they're not really a problem anymore. Peci klapna di docha konsultantes ropa chegire slabna.
Mimitan de chang zombali so deva yon zombali tela teneta porque chusata waja ane pogetri mombo sheneltane trovano
So I asked Geshe for an example of maybe how the Bodhisattva, the Arya Bodhisattva would be benefited by a mind of attachment, right? So Geshe said that if the Arya Bodhisattva, this is an example where the Arya Bodhisattva is male, right? Through attachment, he might court and take a wife, and through that there are going to be many children that become emanations of bodhisattvas. This is one way that a lay bodhisattva, an upasaka bodhisattva, can transform attachment. And actually it says in the teaching, so why would the lay bodhisattva do this, right? Have a family and children. It's said because there are different types of emanations of bodhisattvas. Some are emanated by mind and others are emanated actually through this process of procreation. Those that are emanated through this process of procreation are said to be more powerful and more beneficial.
So
Geshe said, easy to understand that point if you think about Buddha Shakyamuni when he came into this world. How did he come into this world, right? He came into this world by taking birth through a human mother, right? And so through that human mother, he took rebirth and look at the great benefits that he brought forth.
소지 아미가 더는 제야 고반노라 다와ච් 또다 데바레스리아레스
Dawachu.
다와ච්
And it is said that Shakyamuni actually, he remained in the womb of his mother for a long time, for 10 months.
데데아데오 손지세바 파파가 사텔 사찌요하러 왔어 이거 제델
And so it is said that this represents the 10 bhumis, or the 10 grounds of the Bodhisattvas, the fact that he stayed in her womb for 10 months.
오만주바 유자치 못달라 세세 뜬디 왔어 레가다고죠
And the Umalajupa, the Madhyamakavatara, it has 10 generations of mind, which are its 10 liu, or chapters.
어다게자 모터소 어다 든지자 든링안조 단도서 자침보 손지세한테 타도 싫어니 거로 꾸바니라고 원로 그요 다 된간조 로요레스.
And so then we know that we need to practice these two paths of methods and wisdom, which are like the two legs, which are going to allow us to walk the road to enlightenment, and then that will have us turn to Tambo Junju Kribe, to the Bodhisattvacaryāvatāra.
다 드리면 다 깨져 먹으면 또 시게메스 코로코로 슐로가레레 된다 그거 메레 또 아니더니 만테 주본 좀 있어.
And so Geshe is just saying that some of these teachings are relatively straightforward. So he'll gloss with a little bit of commentary these verses, but he's not necessarily going to spend a long time because a lot of the meanings will be evident. And so Shudran Katsu Alishas.
디바토체션 더 마제파
Geshe is using a different book than I am, so I just want to make sure we're on the same page. It'll make it easier.
디바토체션 더 마제파 치송치 단 니가 손주 셈비가 페라 때네 디바 간지지네 또 첨보이나요 봐 요런도 그래 매와서 그래 산다고지.
So this is verse number 6. So for those of you who have the bachelor text, we are on page 2, verse number 6. Hence, virtue is perpetually feeble, the great strength of evil being extremely intense. And except for a fully awakening mind, by what other virtue will it be overcome?
Yeah. So Geshe
said that although, the way that Bachelor has laid it out, you see, actually, there's only really 3 lines there because there's only 3 commas. So Geshe said this is actually considered one verse, but in the Tibetan, it's only 3 lines.
오야 디파토체션 더 마제파 되는 주비션주 세만바 게제 공개선이 내만저스 소설로 자라와.
Yeah, listen. So Geshe is just reading the verse that I just read to you.
어당아로서 나레 senji 우줄라테네 레서야도 랭엠바 파시사야 말했더니 이나요 레지사 랭엠바 지사 니사 다 존는디 바치 사샤와 투메이사 먹어서야 라와스.
So then Geshe said that when we think about all of the evil, all of the negative karma that we have accumulated, if we think about it through all those countless rebirths within samsara, that is something very significant. So because we have been accumulating what is unwholesome, right, for thousands and thousands of rebirths, then those potentialities are there, and we need to do something to purify them, something very powerful to purify them.
다 먹지도 먹어가지고 말다 개와이나요 로tuntra 먹어이나요 레 cep치바르냐 나세하디냐 디어로스.
But Geshe wants to remind you of the other side of this, right? Because folks tend to be negative. That also means that in those 1,000 countless previous births, we've accumulated a lot of what is positive, right? We also have a lot of positive potentialities in the mind stream.
다 챈들레가 종야라 때네 쳇돌린다고 차냐라 다셔와 tuntra 사비가 먹이래지나 쳇돌린다고 쳇테스나 긴지버 메용이라스.
And so however, if we engage with what is unskillful in this life, that's like adding water and fertilizer to the seeds of those negative karma, right? And that's going to bring forth something negative.
다코 보겠다. 그냥 뭐 주주지마도 매나요 디세리 원로. 대 몸보 조발라테는 니바 전부 또 전부라고 차디 안에스.
And so what happens is on the basis of those previous unwholesome karmas, then in this life sort of engaging in what is negative and not purifying it, we also know that karma increases. So the momentum increases more and more and more, which means that there start to be more and more sort of unwholesome potentialities in our mind.
때 그게 매가서야 개이로에 다 들어가서 간서 리치 개와 뭐 개와다 개와 던디야로 왔어. 리그 개와 나게 개와 추주 던디야로 왔어. 세 개와 간디나 추주 던디라테네 콘솔 다 내가 리라고 또 토요 말이스.
So of course we try our best to engage in virtue, but sort of everyday ordinary positive actions of body, speech, and mind, that's going to help, but that's not necessarily going to be powerful enough to overcome, to outweigh those unwholesome potentialities.
다 잘라도 지바라와서 고지부 제주라 따와이나 코프게 디세리워 아니 니빠 뭐지 소대야 이제 곧또 제가 자디가 왔어.
So if we look at the wholesome and the unwholesome, we can think of them as a scale weighing two different things. We can see that because of habituation to the unwholesome and because of many lifetimes engaging with the unwholesome would probably be the heavier, the more significant one.
땡아적 미 코로 니빠데 마통아 존지레 마통 리브시보 통도 왔어. 멀리들 배 노다 파 코로 So of
course we can't see those latencies, we can't see those karmas, those causes that exist within the continuum of beings, but we can posit that there's a lot of unwholesome potentialities. Why? Look at the state of the world, of the wars, of the strife, of all of the misunderstandings and so forth.
그 네바시 토기의 간디진도 손지순이 삼바서 다 디세 리월로 다제서 소소 다 그게 녀레제 따게들라 손바체 뭐니지 뭐 손지세 어다 야쇼지 통스 네스레스.
So then what will help us to overcome those strong, intense, negative karmas? The Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, through their own engagement, their own practice of the path, they realize that one of the powerful antidotes is bodhicitta, rooted in love and compassion.
그래서 손지나요 녀솔을 되어야 되는 이지 슈타보지 제비 또 징녀솔을 다가로 다니라 논소
So remember that story of the Buddha before he became enlightened, right? He was reborn in a hell realm, but through seeing the torment of one of his companions, he brought forth great compassion. And on that basis, immediately, he purified that and was able to leave the lower realms. 조제르베.
쳤어요, 저기. 저거 건가? 저지 자켓지 뭐 저거 건가?
조강. 지오kon가 스카레.
내가 저거 건가?
주강가. 알레.
그래서 가지고 내가 저거 건가 너는 아마지도 뽀기지니 부모지니 저거 년도 콜 셰알토니 원래 비가라 아마티 포기테 니제서 angaro hale amutu pomute nijeso pomute amate nijeso no to kwani kuso was
konso niga chu nangla di su sunkyop chegore samotang
so pajuto maje ani pogite amate nije amate pomote nijeso no to kwani kuso was.
So there's a story of course of the great Ganges river, the great, so that was what Ganga, the Ganga. So the great Ganges river during the time of flood, right, there is that story where a mother and daughter were both trapped within the rushing waters, and there was a bit of a problem because they both felt terrible compassion, didn't want the other one to die, and they each thought of saving the other, but because of that, because there was no kind of end to that, they both ended up they both ended up drowning.
그러니까 실수하려 때는 이나요 파치 제와 여보지 셔와이자 될라 때는 니가 할 셔와지마들 할 셔서.
So it is said that although both the mother and the daughter died, right? Because in the end, there couldn't be an agreement on who would sacrifice their life for who. Because of the sort of loving concern that they brought forth, they were both able to be reborn in a deva realm. That's how powerful that mind is. So there's another angle to this story, right? So there were some rishis who perceived that the mother and the daughter were reborn in the deva realm, but they thought about it in the wrong way. They said, oh, it's the blessings of the river Mother Ganga that have purified their negativities, and because of the power of those waters, they'd be reborn in the deva realm. So Geshe said that in this understanding, this is how the process of washing oneself in the river began.
So Geshe
said, it could be beneficial, and certainly, regular bathing and ablutions in the water are beneficial, but it's not the water, right, that had them take rebirth in the deva realm. It was that strong kind of loving concern and that strong compassion that they had for each other that was the main cause. So, there's also the story of a Sangha, right? A Sangha who saw the dog, which was tormented by infested wounds. And so on the basis of that, he brought forth this feeling of a great compassion. And then that dog transformed into Maitreya. So the point is, of course, that dog may have been Maitreya in actuality, but because of his perceptions of that suffering dog and the great compassion he brought forth, there was that accumulation. So then what this is saying is that in terms of those great negativities, the things that are going to be powerful enough to purify, to overcome them, are love, compassion, and rooted in that bodhicitta. So one must bring that forth. Yeah, so on the method side of the path. So I was saying to Geshe, you were telling us that you need wisdom to uproot all of those negative karmas, and Geshe said, yes, that's true, but right, the text is talking about method now, so it has to talk about now he's telling me to be quiet, so I will be quiet, sorry.
So, where
we are in the text now, right, it's just talked about the power of this awakening mind to be able to clear away all of those negativities. Now it's going to shift its focus and talk about the power of that awakening mind to help us work towards all happinesses. So, all the Buddhas who have contemplated for many aeons have seen it to be beneficial, for by it the limitless masses of beings will quickly attain the supreme state of bliss. So we understand that the bodhicitta is like the king of the method practices, and through bringing forth bodhicitta, one can perfectly accomplish one's own welfare, perfectly accomplish the welfare of others, indeed work towards the limitless masses of beings, all sentient beings, achieving that welfare as well. So we know also the story of Jojerwa
Yeah.
of Lord Atisha circumambulating the Mahabodhistupa in Bodh Gaya, and he was contemplating what is the mind that can bring most benefit to other sentient beings. And then at that moment, it is said that many manifestations of Venerable Tara filled the sky around the stupa, and they said there is no mind more powerful than the bodhicitta rooted in love and compassion.
다 거로이나 있다는 버게 나도 가오래 나마실림 베쇼로 답해 어느 소야 소로 발리도넬 다 깔레모모잔 페바레스.
And it is for that reason, right, that he very much risked his life to go across a great ocean. In those days, a very dangerous journey to go to Indonesia to meet Lama Sudvarnadvipi, Sir Lingpa, to receive the instructions for a rising bodhicitta.
야, 다 되고대. 다 되고대 그 소소가 다 드리게 대 소화지 땜버지 레바이는데 비대 가래 이나요 다 요쇼 간거도 그래야지.
And so then it says, following this verse number 8, that having brought forth that bodhicitta mind with those benefits, then all of the positive wishes one could want, these will be able to arise.
시비드가 자토 존데지 리송아 센체 마데사완데 바도 데모 자토 셰반데 비종 쇼주 세니 따도 도모샤.
So number 8, those who wish to destroy the many sorrows of their conditioned existence, those who wish all beings to experience a multitude of joy, and those who wish to experience much happiness should never forsake the awakening mind.
오다 당길라바 노지레 코알라 버게 강에 태야가 다 비안 고로 시와 자토 몽볼 버게 강에 태야가 접매와서 안데바 요나 오 쇼주 세테렌두다.
So if one wants to be able to get rid of the sorrows of experiencing countless rebirths, then one must bring forth bodhicitta, the awakening mind.
스타 센체 대 소소레서 센체 제일 버게 데시테야 네바 요바 이나요 코레테렌두.
And similarly, one who wishes all beings, so putting aside one's own sorrow and happiness, thinking about other beings achieving happiness, if that is what one wishes, one also needs to cultivate the awakening mind.
오다 텐리 세자치 못 소화지 레바이나 단다 레 돈비 간에 손제 마토 바다 다 기고 주주지는 도야가 다 잘라드렌두 세비가.
And so if we understand this, then we understand that as we work towards this, we can go from happiness to happiness until we achieve that final state through which we benefit others.
오다 팀이 오다니 된다 첨버리는데 와서 라마 정가비 수마노 somba 제데소나 론데 손을 또 그야만 쇼든데 파레.
So this reminds Geshe of the statement by Lama Tsongkhapa that through thinking of through working for the welfare of others, one's own welfare is naturally accomplished. That means that when we try to do something to benefit others, we achieve our own welfare without having to specifically think of ourselves.
오다 지세 던질라테네 쇼주 세테 초아테 다 가디나 냐네 다 파수 또야만데 수근데 와스.
So having understood these very vast benefits, never forsake the awakening mind means we should hold that awakening mind, that bodhicitta within us at all times.
오저세 야보소노 또 가레 스티그닙 강에 가리나 메와서 토야 가레 나로서 코알 강에 뭐 용거로 와 거기 로지 코로테레스. 드닐레 비칼 다 할래야메 나 베다 코아 용주 강에 메와서 키티 레가치키스.
So with this attitude, when one experiences problems within samsara, how should this transform our mindset? We should think, right? It is the nature of samsara for there to be problems and difficulties. So this is not something so significant because I can work through this as part of my goal to reach a state where suffering is cleared away completely.
소소 집을 찾아봐 이나요. 거기 그 강에 파게 짜와 걸어 매봐서는 타발은 로야 타바요쇼는 론데 기지. 세제
랑체진.
매매 거기 야 거기 짜와 걸어 매봐서는 타발은 로야 내가 제기시. 하고 살아와. 강에 주슈를 때네 보게 나도 세주 작음이스다.
So because we are working towards this state to uproot the cause of samsara, to really end samsara, then the small sufferings and so forth that we experience as part of our existence, these are just small by comparison.
예를 따와 이나 예 우주 보게 그냥 코인에서 매봐서니 타바요쇼를 지키겠다 내가 지키시.
Similarly, when we go to this on the other side and think that, other sentient beings who are suffering, I am working to achieve a state of enlightenment where I can work for their benefit. So by compared to that act to work towards a state where I can liberate all beings from suffering, my own suffering is very insignificant.
다 미리야 조주세 녀래 제기들 셀 뽑았던 리치 되게 요아레스 대마 따도 녀래 니네 도요나 대이 자더니 거의 니가 강했던 그 버럭버럭 세주 줘야 되는 요구요 말레스.
So thinking about the reasonings that we've covered, which underpin the Bodhisattva path, what this does is bring forth a very courageous or brave attitude. And when one has that courageous or brave attitude of a bodhisattva, the little things that trouble us in samsara, they won't cause so much of a disturbance, so much of a reaction.
다 된다 쟁에 가리나 다 쟁에 버게 로드 쳐와 쟁에 돌을 샤와 다 버게 원래가 제토 그 아레스.
So with this sort of outlook of the bodhisattva, what this can do is really embody that practice of taking unfortunate conditions or taking obstacles as the path.
다시 안 그러면 지수근도 와서 강에 첨보체비 갈라이나 다 버게 세슈 맞아 뽑아도 된바다 니바도 된바 대토야라요 기로 받지 그래 다 할레비 기볼레비 갈라이 나저처럼도 다가서 다 세두가르지 처럼만도네 그거 따따 대토야 길래가 지금 와래.
So His Holiness mentions the benefits of bodhicitta as they sort of reveal themselves during difficult times and during happy times. During difficult times, this mind of bodhicitta gonda 강에 옆에 가불라 간디스trogeje.
세슈 맞아 아니라 야 뽑아도 된바지네 다 니바 요바지네 대토야.
This attitude of bodhicitta helps one maintain bravery, helps one maintain courage and not get discouraged when things are difficult. When things are good, this attitude of bodhicitta prevents one from getting too puffed up, from one being comfortable in one situation and looking down or feeling disconnected from others. So there's those two sides of the benefit.
다 뒤바지 리송아. 다 니는 매바 추던져와 빼. 그래. 말을 대해서
디마레.
메도 대체와지 토바스.
이 하모코 디 테마소 얘네.
메도스케자. 메도 대 밍 치워쳐야. 되네 대치워토야.
So then the next one is that one comes to possess great names and great renown. This is verse number 9. This is verse number 9.
밑에 거기도 와서 리라고 되게 그야만 되더니
So this does not mean achieving a name or a title in a worldly sense, right? Which could cause us to become proud.
변화상으로 뭐 지수근도 와서 코로나 자와를 뭐 지금 미드 돈을다 아니 가리나 면아 된다 센젤로 번좀을로 패도 제가 고가 정보시 토송이 왔어.
So His Holiness talks about that by receiving this name of the Dalai Lama, he doesn't see it as a way that puts him above others, but he sees the name Dalai Lama as providing him an opportunity to do something to contribute to the benefit of beings.
다 된지 이자 메라 때네 버게 치드발라 버게 예드드발라 요 두는 줘야지 우패도 지금 거야.
So therefore, achieving these names, achieving these titles that we'll see in the verse coming up, this can be an assisting factor in one's activities to benefit other sentient beings.
달로기다. 저 세세잖아. 깨지게 코예자라 돈베뇨토는 대제 노제 세시 제자시 지델 하모지비 샤샨죠.
The moment an awakening mind arises in those fettered and weak in the jail of cyclic existence, they will be named a son of the Sugatas and will be revered by both men and gods of the world.
쇼주주 세 버게 초와 땜보지 버게 아버지 제토바이나 세르시 초와지 레버 땜보지 레바이나 다 코와 논에 다 쪼고 뭐지와 인지네요. 아고사라와서 다 말라도 뭐 관계 샤사서 예지 쳐바래.
So awake in those in whom the awakening mind in whom bodhicitta arises. So Geshe said fettered and weak in the jail of cyclic existence. This could mean that one who is poor or one who is disadvantaged and generally kind of disregarded by others, right? He or she actually becomes a worthy object of prostration of others.
아고사라와 오다 미무들이 야이세 사태 손지가 세세는 다 미자치 뭐지 도그래.
So one becomes a child of the Sugatas, right? This means a child of the Buddhas.
오다 손지 요비 깔아요 할 레벨로 첨부 잡아서 기대 코토모 코타 라레벨 때니 리바초보
Yeah.
아니 로조메바 다보치 코통고 요아이자 자바사바지 코로 두지 먹어서 요아레스
Su.
로침보 자바서 기지와 손지갈
So at the time of the Buddha, there was an older man who, he didn't come from a noble situation, and he was an older man who joined the Sangha, the community of monks. And especially because of his age, the other monks kind of looked down on him, disregarded him.
그건 너무 야보마서 tani 자바서 갈래니 다 코트니 야 자바사바지 콜 두지 먹어서 요아레스
Yeah. So then, he came from, not a privileged situation, and he entered the Sangha as an old man. So a lot of those who had entered the Sangha when they were young and had noble lineages, they kind of looked down on him, disregarded him.
tani ji마 코티셀 지맘비 티셀 레베가 손지게 챙겨 와라와스 아니 뭔가 버 저저도 담아 뭔가 버 이사요 코트니 자석 타는 로쇼스 말로치 못 티니나 자석 짠 로쇼
So seeing this and understanding that this old monk was experiencing difficulties, right, through the power of his clairvoyance, the Buddha instructed one of his chief disciples, Moggallāyana, to take the old man to the shore of the ocean.
다 보겐 로비깔은 야할 레비타 다가서 말했어. 야 야토 먹었던 코를 놀러 토끼냐. 그만 놓으시지 하고 살아. 이거지 알았어.
Rukok. 냥이 말해 Rukok 마토.
그만 냥이 내려와.
얘네 탄다 Rukok. Okay. So as he came to the shore of the ocean, there were the huge bleached bones, and Geshe described it as like a fish whose mouth you could walk into, and it's like it was so big that people could walk inside of it. So I think it's likely some sort of whale or something. So the bones of a huge sea creature were there.
다 먹간가 되는 때 못하는 로야를 그가워도 코로니 되는 때 못하는 로야를 왔어.
And so Rukok tenso.
누노로
Ale konso Rukok nangla joso.
Yeah.
And so they entered sort of this, I guess, enclosure of bones, Moggallāyana and this older monk and Ananda and some others.
단디zal 노비까 다 건조지를 건조 할래니. 다 무티 리고 염발라 다 traditional 차고지 와라와스. 텔 할래네 단데 간디시나 세타 그가월 깨서 저랬더니 말을 그가워 말을 간다. 소리 뭔가
Moggallāyana.
뭔가 벌다 그랬다 때 저러고 시작한 거 마트레.
And so as they were within this enclosure of bones, the monks were exclaiming like, wow, like think about like the size of these bones, and like what kind of karma could lead one to be reborn as such a sea creature. And at that time, Moggallāyana, he told the old monk, actually, this was your previous rebirth.
Dani ko pa haleto achene ta ko ate se hatele patashe no tsawani mo me patan dani chimbe tsachi mo jese ngi jupi ta poshe tela tene ta le lawo ge tone ta poge da chomba to logi yares.
And it is said that through seeing that, he contemplated the kind of nature of samsara. He contemplated the difficulties of samsara and how it has no essence. On that basis, he was able to bring forth that mind of definite emergence and quickly achieve the state of a foe destroyer.
다 친구들 자서 자는 판로딜 콜 저메 이제 그거 로바지는 코치스 와라스.
Moggallāyana.
뭔가 버그로. 뭔가 버그. 대대대지서 자가로. 하고 살아. 코로를 다 반전에 제일은저와 이나지레스. 지금디 코로 바 노카는 로토기 좌사.
So on the way, after having that realization, which unfolded very quickly upon seeing those bones, then the old monk, he was actually able through miracle powers, the legs of magical emanation, to kind of fly back to the land from whence they came. So on the way there, the story goes that Moggallāyana had to take him on his monk's shawl or something and kind of like almost like drag him through the air somehow to that place. But on the way back, due to that realization of definite emergence, he was able to kind of fly back to the monastery.
손지자를 내일 다용 거기 앞 단다 잡아사바르지 곧 다좀 토요메 하마코네 단달랑 만두지 콘서트에서 투시속이 아레스.
But the other monks, they didn't see him traveling through the air, right? They just saw that he had arrived back at the monastery. So not knowing that he had achieved the state of a foe destroyer, they were still looking down on him, actually.
아니 손지가 저러서 걸 통치자야 말고 나 좀부터 사 거기서 다들 이치야 말했어.
And the Buddha actually kind of admonished them and said that, it's not good for you to kind of denigrate this older monk because he's actually achieved the state of a foe destroyer. And the other monks were basically like, whatever, like they didn't really believe it, even though the Buddha said it.
다 손지가 선제가 고도 미빠도 다 근데 내서 차서 첨바이자 손지가 너무 많이 되지야.
So we can see from that story too, right, that the Buddha perfectly was able to penetrate the affinities and capacities of his various students and manifest something in a way that could help them reach realization.
야, 단데서 못 와서 건다라. 다 멤버 주든지 베스데.
Mempas and the doctor.
말해. 멤버스 줘고.
Ale.
마와데.
Mempadi.
주듯이 봐야.
So a verse now about how the power of bodhicitta takes those who may be of low position to highest position.
현재의 넘버 초답은 무슨 린들론의 자유를 지르도 매바지나 쇼지 세시자와라 대준.
Segyotsi.
Yeah.
Okay. So it is the supreme gold-making elixir, for it transforms the unclean body we have taken into the priceless jewel of a Buddha form, therefore firmly seize this awakening mind.
당가로서 아버지는 쇼지 세가 보게 좋았대 몰래서 듣다니야 니바지 토자소나. 어느 단다 거의 내려 되네 이나야 다 보게 저지르도 매바져와 노지 보게 다 So through the power of bodhicitta, it takes this unclean body. So this means this body that has as its causes karma and affliction, right? It takes that, and bodhicitta is like quicksilver, like this magical substance that transforms iron into gold. So it takes this unclean body we have and transforms it into a Buddha form. 아고사라와 오다 듣니고 같이 뭐지래 대조케트 스레스는 농기 세게 니발라테네 아고사라 가디나 보게 가르 거의 강에 대한 먹으니까 보게 양기 보자야 됐어.
So how does this work? How is it like that magical quicksilver substance? Bodhicitta activates this mind that is able to transform any situation in samsara, even difficult, into the path of awakening.
오다 디자기 있어라.
Yeah, so we will stop here. So just for those of you who are following with the text, we are stopping at verse number 10 in chapter 1.
다 뒤에 다 롱가 아버지 나로 선도사도 조기하레스 좀바도 니지도 전지 세티가 다 시라티 다 바체 감각 보게 내바시게 감각 매봐서 그하레스.
So then actually we are establishing ourselves on the path with this motivation of bodhicitta, love, and compassion.
Yeah.
And we need to also practice what is going to completely eliminate any source of obstacles on that path, which is wisdom.
빼나 롱가 아버지 좀바도 니지 전지 세대 롱가 아버지 저 살아왔어. 롱가 아버지 이나야 다 그마도 잡아도 더니 뭐가 봐이나 요강에 알아왔어.
So we can think of bodhicitta rooted in love and compassion. These are the materials that have like built this road that we're going to travel. But if we fall into a sinkhole or if we get robbed by bandits on that road, right, we're not going to be able to come to much benefit.
So that
is the function of that wisdom. So we are now going to turn to our discussion of the Heart Sutra.
시라니 먹니지 되라. 니죠.
Yeah, Nuji.
시라니 먹니지 셰비깔라. 다 시라니 먹니지 셰비깔라. 아니 다또 사실 서레스 리라워잖아.
So then one of the ways of dividing the perfection of wisdom, the basis for it, is dividing it into kind of three outlines.
샤리부그들은 저와시 위쳐.
Yeah.
아니 텔라 시레즈가 레타 비쳐.
Yeah.
텔라 손지거든 이세저론 제 비쳐.
So we can divide this into the pronouncements of three figures. First, Shariputra's question. Second, Avalokiteshvara's answer. And third, the Buddha's confirmation and rejoicing. So speech from three figures here, Shariputra, Avalokiteshvara, and Buddha Shakyamuni.
다 손지 다 오나 샤리 벌었더니 그랬더니 저와 시와도 저와 또이 디세데도 시레zel었더니 레타비 디세데 고가도 어디 디세데 간데스 중요시원해.
So one may ask, right? Within this sutra, a lot of it is the speech of Shariputra and Avalokiteshvara. So how did Shariputra come up with this question? And how was Avalokiteshvara able to answer it?
다 가서 농가라이나 노슬을 따와이나. 페나 손지 거를 곰잡이 디세지.
Yeah.
아니 오다 가서 좀비 디세지. Zambasın niku. Ani shila jivi tisechi. Oda tani tisen ramanda yoharwas. Kalasaya.
Ali. So we can think about this as the various activities of these beings, right? These practitioners on the path. Sometimes they were meditating, maybe sometimes they were sleeping, maybe sometimes they were eating.
당연히 지나 손질을 tani koka yawati 그 yohamares. Niye netsal라.
Ale, loso.
Hakasarawa kadina nyomba yohajimbi nguni korokanga.
But with a Buddha, these are not so relevant because although externally it may look like the Buddha is meditating, is sleeping, or is eating, actually the Buddha remains in a state of meditative equipoise, even during those activities. So for a lot of beings, we talk about the practice when one is in meditative equipoise and the practice when one arises from meditative equipoise. But to be clear, because the Buddha can perfectly accomplish any activity, including for the welfare of others, while remaining in equipoise, we don't usually have this differentiation. But, you know, in this case, Buddha Shakyamuni took a human form. So he also manifested what we call an ordinary appearance, right? In part so that he could feel closer to the disciples. So at the time of the Heart Sutra, it was an ordinary appearance that the Buddha was in meditative equipoise. So he was kind of sitting still, unspeaking in meditation. And so one may ask, all right, so the Buddha was in this state of meditative concentration, but we can talk about different types of samadhi or concentration. So which of these concentrations or samadhis was it? So then we talk about it in this way. The concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Yeah. Concentration on the categories of profound phenomena called profound perception. How can this be understood? It can be understood as a state of concentration that is abiding in a profound understanding how things are empty because they are dependent arisings, and how because they are dependent arisings, they are empty. So this particular phrase and how it is glossed or understood is going to be different in many of the traditions within Tibetan Buddhism. So you won't find the same explanation in the Sakya, Nyingma, Kagyu, or Gelug presentations. There will be slight difference. So Geshe wants to make something very clear, because also in yesterday's Vajrayogini commentary, he was outlining some disputes between scholars of different lineages about different aspects of the practice. So when Geshe highlights these critiques of different lineage figures of each other, he never does this with a wish to denigrate any of those great scholars or their view. He presents us with different views that we can think about with the hope of sharpening our wisdom. That's the reason.
다 라마서도 쓰이나요. 거로그 수야텔 자로를 제세조 가르렌도 스테이지 따와이노 맹아 더 많이 받는 줘야 된대요. 아레스.
So, we always talk about receiving profound or essential instructions. One of the ways of receiving profound or essential instructions is to uncover them. So not just merely listening to a pronouncement of a particular lama or lineage figure and accepting it, but seeking to uncover the reason behind that pronouncement. When we uncover that reason, we have identified another essential instruction. So one of the distinguishing outlooks of Lama Tsongkhapa's practice tradition is how dependent arising underpins and assists emptiness, and how emptiness underpins and assists dependent arising, right? This is a very profound understanding that he had. Tabla minesana sinbe. Neba meba. Right. And it is actually said that if we are able to understand a little bit about Lama Tsongkhapa's presentation of how dependent arising underpins emptiness and emptiness underpins dependent arising, we can also see how method informs wisdom and wisdom informs method, that they are not at odds. So also, through understanding this point, when we hear the words empty, we won't think of empty just in sort of a meaningless way as an absence. We will think empty of something specific, empty of inherent existence, empty of arising independently of other factors.
So
the lens of affliction deceives us and thinks that any object that appears to us, it is arising independently from its own side. Emptiness challenges this misapprehension and says it does not arise independently from its own side. It can only arise through dependently upon the appropriate causes. Attachment, anger, the various kinds of namtok, false thinking, or mental projections. We can really trace back the arising of a lot of these to this misapprehension that object with which we are interacting is something solid, findable, independent. But what these teachings are saying is that actually that object is empty of existing in the way that this misapprehension tells you it does. In fact, it is only possible to arise through the coming together of those various factors. It is a dependent arising. Okay. So when we're seeing something through the lens of our anger, it seems that that thing is solidly and independently existent. But what we'll see is that when we challenge that misapprehension and are able to think about it as a dependent arising, the anger connected with that object naturally dissipates. So, hi, everybody. I did see a question pop up that I just want to address. Someone was asking which edition of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra we're using. Initially, I had wanted to use the Lotsawa House one because the Tibetan comes together with the English and it was easier for me to follow. But in the end, I thought just because of familiarity and also we'll get the chanting right because the chanting is all embedded together. We're actually going to use the Heart of Perfection of Wisdom as it appears in the FPMT Prayers for Teaching Occasions book.
Oh, tindi bache, ta tindi swa, ta shari pala tindi ke tawa shonji sembi nyole kanga tawa toyaga kol powa do nibadi yo amare konye ti rawas.
So one thing we need to understand about Shariputra's question, actually, Kodra Chomparwa, he was a sorry. He was a hearer, a Shravaka disciple. And so he actually was not yet at a high enough level of spiritual attainment to be able to propose the correct question at the right time. But it is said that through a blessing manifesting from the Buddha's concentration, it's like the right question was able to appear to Shariputra and he was able to ask it. So it might be sort of difficult maybe for beginners or difficult for secular people to accept, but it's actually said that through the blessing of the Buddha's concentration, you can even have leaves rustle in a tree, and the sound of those rustling leaves will speak the profundity of Dharma. Yeah, so we'll come to more of a discussion of those different kinds of blessings of the Buddha that occur through concentration. So, yeah. So Shariputra has asked the question, and then also through a blessing, Avalokiteshvara is able to propose the answer. So Avalokiteshvara's answer has different levels or layers within it. So one way of dividing that is his answer for disciples of limited faculties and his answer for disciples of sharp faculties.
This one, ta ombo to boga lo nyole ramba tela nolo ta ngaze yawashana tani yaga
Lamga e.
Nga shena.
Netsunga lamga.
Ne ale longa sanandagre ta karjana.
Lamga digirwa solam jolam.
Oh, tate ale tumalashu.
Yeah. So
Terumar sorry.
Netsunga. Okay. So in Avalokiteshvara's answer, his answer for those disciples of limited faculties, we can consider it to have 5 points.
Oh, ta tulone ka cheshu no cheshu de tombo fulo do jolo ni kala shonji sembe ane tumbani le nyole jotote ka chemo no cheshu de res.
Tumbani kandes nyamlen chege solam don jola. So the most important out of those outlines is the one that explains how the Bodhisattva on the paths of accumulation and preparation is supposed to cultivate profound emptiness. And this is and so the answer to this, how the Bodhisattva practices profound emptiness while on the paths of accumulation and preparation, this is like the very heart essence of the instructions of this sutta. And so then it relates to the words that appear in the sutra, which say, form is empty. Emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. So, form is empty, emptiness is form, emptiness is not other than form is not other than emptiness. The essence of the Heart Sutra is contained within this pronouncement. And actually, this truth spoken here is the same truth that is the essence of all of the other Prajñāpāramitāhṛdaya, or perfection of wisdom sutras.
시라니 뭐 차선대 디세 매나 대지본대나 가로 고쳐봐나 보지래.
So so Geshe said a lot of people are saying, like, I don't have time to do all of these recitations. So he's saying, if you don't have time to recite the Heart Sutra, you just recite form is emptiness, emptiness is form, emptiness is not other than form, form is not other than emptiness, because this is the most important essence. And so this explains emptiness according to 4 characteristics. So, as we're coming to the end, Geshe wanted to propose one easy way to think about this verse. A lot of qualified scholars say that you can change the wording a little bit to relate it more directly to yourself. So you would say, I is empty, emptiness is I, right? Emptiness is not other than I is also not other than emptiness.
This one,
So we can say form is empty is talking about ultimate truth. Emptiness is form is talking about relative truth. So emptiness is not other than form is explaining that the 2 truths are not of different essences. They are of one essence. And the next sentence is indicating that as well, that the 2 truths are not separate, that they are expressing the same essence.
This one?
This is also not. Yeah. So we'll leave it here because we're coming to the end of our time. So just remember those first 2 lines. It is ultimate truth and relative truth, respectively. And the next 2 lines, emptiness is not other than form, form is also not other than emptiness. This is saying that those 2 truths, relative and ultimate, are not separate, that they are of one essence. If one can understand the essence of the 4 points expressed here, this can shake the very foundations of the afflictions, which are the driving cause of samsara.
This one, so
we'll leave it here, and then hopefully you can maybe revisit this sutra on your own, and we'll come to more discussion of it as we go forward. And so we'll do a brief dedication. If you need to kind of continue on with your day, please feel free. But if you'd like to stay for questions and answers after the dedication, you are most welcome. Let us dedicate with a joyful mind. Changjo zemjo rinpoche maje bano jenjo chi shewa nyamba meba yon gone gondu bewa ju doni dawa rinpoche maje bano jenjo chi shewa nyamba meba yon gone gondu bewa ju Jamba boy, Jada Jamba don Kanda Zomba Deyon Deja de da Gongi Jeza Dalo Gewa Nida Tonjera Dongo Diza Jebe Gawa Tonje Ngowa Gona Choda Ngawa de Dagi Giwi Tsawa Daga Jon Zombo Jeje Radha Ngowa Kangri rawe
Koye Jingozo Medon Dewa Malen Jine Jere Tenzo Janzo Yin Shabe Zuni Ado Denjuro Roje Kandi Gawa Kandi Chisayana Dini Palatini So that the Otoji Chimbigata to Gumba Kandi Yoga Yinayo Kanga Pagaya Punta Payaji.
through the merits that myself and others have accumulated through this collected power of potential, may His Holiness the Dalai Lama abide for a long time, and may all of his holy wishes and intentions be fulfilled without obstruction.
Shiva Tombas to Shipita Senchel Pemba Tuki Apochiki Kari Gina Tapage Pacheme Pakisiriwadi.
And similarly, may all other holy beings existing on this vast world who engage in actions solely to benefit others, may they have longevity and may they accomplish their activities without obstruction.
Dona Senji Zulu Tap Senji Page or Sunji Shala June Page Deshi Nimashatoyaji.
And through the blessing of the Buddha and these collected merits, may the sun of happiness shine on all beings without discrimination. So we will pause there. Let me turn on the volume. All right. So if anybody has any questions, please go ahead. Okay, I see Marta, I see B, I see Dinah, I see Annie. So I don't know who came first. So I'm just going to say, let's go to Marta first because she's the first that appears in my screen. Then we'll go to B, then we'll go to Dinah, then Annie. Go ahead, Marta.
Good morning or good afternoon, Geshe and Kedrup and everybody.
Thanks so much. Good morning. Good morning, Marta.
It's just a question about the prayer to eliminate obstacles.
Yeah.
Is the mantra in Costa Rica in our association. They say just a syllable in a different way. I want to clarify because
which mantra are you asking about, Marta? Are you asking about Akat Samara Sashadara Samaraya Pe? Is that the one you're asking? So you want Geshe to pronounce that?
Yeah, I want to tell you how we say it.
Oh, okay.
We say Akasamara Sha Sa Ra Da, and then you say Sa Sha Da Ra. So I want to know which is correct because we say Akasamara Sha Sa Ra Da, and then you say Sa Sa.
Oh, okay. Well, all right. Hago-san, konso ko Akat Samara Chasha Dara Samaraya Pe Di Kandis Drogores Ngakti Sumtang Kandis.
Akasamaranza Shadara Samaraya Pe.
Did you hear what Geshe said?
Akasamaranza Shadara Samaraya Pe.
We say Akasamara Sasha.
Akasamaranza Shadara Samaraya Pe.
I mean, so now you have Geshe's opinion on how to say it, but I mean, I think there just might be sometimes there's differences, you know, even with these mantras, it's funny. So Geshe said that's how he learned to recite it, so that's how he recited it, right? But yeah. But also one of the things you should know is that when you recite this mantra, you have to push your mala away from you. Push the rosary away from you when you recite this, not towards you.
Okay, thank you.
No problem, Marta. Thanks. So we'll go to B next. Go ahead, B.
The two lines of Heart Sutra you were mentioning, form is empty.
Mhm.
Oftentimes, it is being translated as form is emptiness. And a lot of teachers say that way. Oh, table is empty, table is emptiness, flower is emptiness.
Yeah. So let me
So-
ask, you want me to ask Geshe how he would translate?
Yes, yes, please.
Okay, yeah. 然后的su tong pao tongpa ni su so suk tong pao sena suk tongpa res suk tongpa ni res
zu tumba go zu tumba ni re se ma re de ngan zo chena
suk tongpa res.
ya zu tumba go
Yeah. So so I'm going to do a little bit of Tibetan with the English B because I think the answer of your question lies there. So the Tibetan word for emptiness is tongpa ni. Right? But in the Tibetan translation of the Heart Sutra, this first line is suk tong pao, not suk tongpa ni, and not suk tongpa. So I asked Geshe, do you understand it as suk tongpa, or suk tongpa ni? Do you understand it as empty or emptiness? He says he understands it as form is empty. Form is empty, not form is emptiness.
re ta ni pa tan jo wa ja ni re to mo ta ga ro ndo yo res ni pa tan jo wa te se to go ya res
Nipati gyo tets tongresana tongpa ni suso. Ale. Los
tumba ni zu ma ro was
Yeah.
ta ina yo ti ten to ten jo wa te se to ga res
Mari, kochi di mari. Nangata.
ro te res ha ko zu tumba go asana chi tumba ni re pe je ma to no ya ga res
So for the first one, Geshe is saying form is empty. It's better if you don't use the word tompani or emptiness here. It's better if you just leave it as empty.
zu tumba go jala ba ina
Mhm.
ta ga je tumba me ba ke ja ma res zu ru ji ji tri pi tumba res
Because it's not emptiness of something, it's empty of something. Empty of what? Empty of inherent existence. We would say something is empty of inherent existence, not emptiness of inherent existence.
this one ta tumba ni zu so sana te chi ta ga ro ja na de ya ma res tumba ni zu ma ro was
So emptiness is form. We also need a caveat here, right? Because obviously emptiness is not form on one level, right? So this part requires explanation.
ti ten da pa te ri wo zo ne ru ji ji tri pi to yin ja la chi
Right.
chi
Yeah.
zu re
So what it's really saying is that thing which is lacking or which is empty of inherent existence is form. That's the way the commentaries say that second part should be understood.
ha ko sa re
Mhm.
ru ji ji me pi ane ko za chi nga res
Or that, or if we use the I, that,
so so ja gi na
Younger Sundam,
ru ji ji tri pi
Yeah.
ko za chi nga re sa ta
Rangjengi Drupa Mepe.
ru ji ji me pi
Yeah.
ko za chi
Yeah.
nga res
That self of persons which lacks inherent existence is the I, right? Because Geshe talked about understanding this differently by replacing the word form with the word I. I is empty, emptiness is I.
ha ko sa re o ta ten da mi ya ten de do was ya te zo na ta ko ro pa ta nyo da chen me ba ta re de res
Rangjingi Drupa Mepa Gi Chokla
ya
Chokla.
ta tu zu tumba go tu ma ni zu so sa te je te za jana
Yeah.
do nyo da me ba ta pa ge
So if we understand it as kind of pointing to that absence of inherent existence, this will kind of solve a lot of problems with understanding the meaning of these lines.
re ma to tu ma ni zu so da lo tu ma ni zu re na wo chi la ba wa chi ti ga tu ma ni zu ba chen yo ma was
Because if you say that emptiness is form and you just take that as face value, that's obviously wrong, right? Because emptiness is not a form, right? It's a lack of something. It's a lack of inherent existence.
o ta nga zu chen se ma da ma cha wo ten de second du was ke ba ten de da zu ko tu ma ni re sa da wo ten de la ke ten de du nga zu se na zu tu ma ni re se ma res
Yeah. Some do argue for that position, right? They say that emptiness is form and form is also emptiness. But the scholars in our tradition do not follow that view.
tu ma ni na te do de ma chang do re nga zu chen na te do de ba
Emptiness is ultimate truth. We have to understand emptiness is ultimate truth.
zu na ka di na ko do de ba re ma te do de ma do sa yo ma res
Form is necessarily a relative truth. There's no kind of scenario where you could propose form as an ultimate truth.
zu ra pa thawa shin thawa momo ya re tene kan ka re ya ba yin na ten da ka zo de ma ro gar ma to te de ma ro sam dus.
And that's any type of form. So we talk about three types of form: coarse, subtle, and extremely subtle. Those three types of form, coarse, subtle, and extremely subtle, they are all relative truths. They cannot be posited as ultimate truths.
zu ka she tu ni ngel tu ga zu ka she tu ni ji le tu ga da na ma ya ten da ka re na yo ka zo de ma ro ga
Tompani tongjes and tompani topijela sukashe tongdra.
to tu ga de ya res
Ale, perna?
ta zu thamo ka zo thamo ten yo wa
Ale, loso tompani matogen tongtu gyomares.
ya tu ma ni ma tu cha ne jene jene zu thamo tu ga ya ten de.
So, sorry, I got confused for a minute. So Geshe proposed these three types of form: coarse, subtle, and extremely subtle. So the paradox is, although that extremely subtle form is a relative truth, it requires a realization of emptiness to be able to perceive that extremely subtle form. You can't perceive that extremely subtle form without a realization of emptiness.
This one, that demba ni peten kawa res. Ni ka yemba ji no ya sam do sam dus ten da.
Yeah, but we also have to understand that relative and ultimate truth ine konso ngo chik lagire.
Ta de chi da na cha. Ni ra sa pan ze.
We should understand these as different, relative and ultimate truth.
Ta zo ta tang ge tel te la tho so ko ya re. Zu tu ma go se te le la ga ren do as. Zu ro ji te pi to wa.
Yeah.
So
Geshe thinks that form is empty is correct here because that makes it easier to understand, because form is empty of existing from its own side or by way of its own nature. Form is empty of existing inherently.
Form
is empty of is empty of being permanent, also would be another way to understand it.
This one?
Yeah. Form, so emptiness is form. Out of the two, this is the one that's a little tougher to understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we could say that Geshe likes to phrase it in a way that's easy to understand. The thing that yeah. So the thing that has arisen that is empty of inherent existence is the flower, or is the form. If you kind of sort of expand it in that way, Geshe says it's easier to understand. So there's lots of actually different ways that this is explained, and it's good to engage with all of those. But Geshe said this is the way that he thinks is kind of the easiest. Yeah. So that thing that is that thing that has arisen that lacks inherent existence is the I, right? If you apply it to yourself rather than the form. So this could be a possible way to think about it.
Thank you for that very clear explanation. I understood, but I always have problem explaining it to others. And I recently got into argument with the Kakyupa and then the Nyingmapa. And so Geshe is saying that there are actually scholars who do think that form is literally emptiness and vice versa. Okay, all right. Okay, so it's not just a confusion of language.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Ko di segire dua ko tropo kashi dang tsupa shor so di kola rwa ane Geshe la di ko di dapo hako so ine tanda Geshe la tene ko selbo chi ko tsare dua ine ko samsam di Nyingma dang kaiju din so dang tsupa shor ne konso su tompa sugres konso ngene kelengire bes di dapo kelenge nyere besa.
Yeah, so
their perspective is that all is emptiness, so that there's not really form at all. So there are some who hold that perspective. That may be what they're thinking.
Tano uzu tuma nyere zala konzo peche tsi te peche tu duas te karase shiona.
Yeah. But so that's how they would understand. That's how they would understand form is empty. Geshe doesn't know how they would understand emptiness as form. He'd be curious to understand that. But also he's saying that not all Kajupas and Nyingmapas would hold this view. It's certain within those traditions who hold this view, not all. So when we say the word ni senati tene. Yeah. And so also you asked about empty versus emptiness. So that kind of second part of the word, which in Tibetan would be the tompa ni, and which in English would be ness, this is actually something that is very consequential. Megak. So it is an important object of refutation, actually, within that. Yeah, it is. So I think there's a lot to unpack here, but maybe we can go to the other folks, because I see there's a lot of hands up, so we'll go to the other folks. Maybe we circle back, but I think there's a lot to unpack here. Thanks so much, B, for your question. That was interesting.
Thank you.
Dinah. Dinah.
Hello, Tashi Delik.
Good to see you. Good to see you.
I found a definition of the Prajñāpāramitāhṛdaya that is like compact that I wanted to run by you.
Sure.
Because I had mentioned it to someone before and they said, it sounds like nihilism to me. So if you could, it says the motivation of one should be to become a bodhisattva or someone who is content with nothing less than all knowledge attained through the perfection of wisdom for the sake of all beings. And then the number 2 is there is no such thing as a bodhisattva or all knowledge or a being or the perfection of wisdom or an attainment.
Okay, so
and then but that important one, okay, read it back. So
yeah, I'm going to read it back to you to make sure that I got it. So the first one is saying that the Prajñāpāramitāhṛdaya is the motive to become a bodhisattva, working for all beings and achieving all knowledge for that purpose, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
And then the second one is there is no such thing as a bodhisattva, no such thing as knowledge, and no such thing as being. Is that correct?
It's no such thing as a bodhisattva or all knowledge or a being or the perfection of wisdom or an attainment. Okay.
Then ko shershin gidonda kola kechichigidwa. Then shershin gidonda dapochik ni dapo koswa. Ane mi chik meta dapo drogres kyunju cheswa. Chik seria sena shershin seria di rwa. Ganso jamchub gi sempa semshin chat sangwa pentok chia gi chedu rwa shepa tamadi shershin di togores. Di shershin gi dun chigres. Nipa di Jangchup sempa yomares, shershin yomares, shepa yomares, kamsak yomares, semchen yomares segidwa. Nipa di metala drogire besa.
Yeah, kuza yomare, shipa yomare, ota tri zalava ina.
Yeah.
Talama tsonga bachena peda meta chimbochires.
So according to Geshe-la's understanding of Lama Tsongkhapa's view, the second one that you propose, that there's no such thing as a bodhisattva, no all knowledge, no perfection, and so forth, and no perfection of wisdom, this would be considered a nihilistic understanding. Yes. Yeah.
So according
So there are some who, when they're explaining the perfection of wisdom, right, they explain it this way. Young Sundal. They say that there is only emptiness, that all of the appearances that one encounters are false, that all of the appearances are empty of existing. So there are some who would argue that view. So we would say that this is actually an extreme expression of this view of nihilism.
So what we
would say is that, yes, like all of those things that we are encountering are appearances, but that doesn't mean that they are empty. They just do not exist exactly in the way that they appear. We say that they do not exist in the way they appear. Because we can see that there are functioning things, right? And a lot of important principles are underpinned by that fact, right? There's a being who accumulates karma. There's a being who experiences the results of karma. Similarly, right? There's a being who wears clothes, who eats a meal, and so forth. All of these relative or conventional things we can't disregard.
So
Geshe likes the first of the two explanations of Prajñāpāramitāhṛdaya that you gave. He likes the first one better.
And the bottom says the solution of the dilemma lies in nothing else than the fearless acceptance of both contradictory facts.
Can you tell me who wrote this? This might help.
It's Konze. It's a translation of the Abhisamaya-lankara.
No, Nguntujin. Which, the second one or the first one?
The divisions, the large sutra on perfect wisdom with the divisions of the Abhisamaya-lankara.
No. But Dinah, I'm asking the Abhisamaya-lankara. You gave me two different definitions for the perfection of wisdom. So the text that you're citing now, is that the source of the first one or the second one?
Discussion.
Because the context is always good, because Geshe might know more about the text, which will actually get you a much better answer.
It mentions the phases of the extinction of self.
But who's the author? Like on the cover of the text, who's the author?
Konze, C-O-N-Z-E.
Edward Konze.
Konze.
Yes.
So it's Konze's translation of the Prajñāpāramitāhṛdaya.
Yes.
Okay. That's the one that had the second one, right?
It had the both. It has both.
Both.
It has the definition that we should become a bodhisattva and blah, blah, blah. But then when we reach the perfection of wisdom, we realize there is no such thing as a bodhisattva, blah, blah, blah. But then he said the solution of this dilemma is nothing else than the fearless acceptance of both contradictory facts.
Okay. So for those, so I think like it's really important when we have quotes to source them, just because I think that will help you get a better answer. It'll also help me to translate better. So Konze is an early scholar who translated the Prajñāpāramitāhṛdaya, the perfection of wisdom. And in his translation of the Prajñāpāramitāhṛdaya, there's a lot of commentaries, one of the ones which Dinah just cited. So I'm going to say what his conclusion was to Geshe and see what Geshe thinks about this. Chirtang sheshingi do michik gyurtsare duas, dene ko gyurya dene netso dinso ni yore. Rua shershin sena nganso jangshub semba chik chagores, dene nganso shepa chatsangwa ha kone, dene nganso mira pentok che gogire duas. Di ha kone, dene jangshub sempa yo mares, rua mi kangsak yo mares, shershin yo mares, ko drogi duas, rua netso ni dinso dene gyurgendi, netso ni dinso ha kogores. Ngachana mi yo mares, kangsak yo mare, jangshu senpa yo mare, shershingi do nangla yore. Yeah. So Geshe does not dispute that the perfection of wisdoms would say that there is no bodhisattva, no knowledge, no perfection, and so forth. But just as with the Heart Sutra, we would have the same understanding, which is that saying that there is no is actually pointing to that lack of inherent existence of those things, rather than saying there's nothing at all.
아마 이난 대제 자동이 당기로 과니 모고도와스 가시에서는 배도 요 말에 다도지 요.
Yes, yeah. And Geshe said that this actually goes back to what he said with, remember, form is empty. Some just accept that there is no form at all, right? We say that we say that we need to actually understand that the form is empty of inherent existence. So that's how he would understand, Dinah, the second one that you proposed, right? Like no bodhisattva, no perfection, and so forth.
Oh, yes.
Does that help you or not?
Yes, and it seems to me that the most important part, just to keep it really simple, is that the motivation to become is the most important part of the first one. And the acceptance is the most important part of the second one.
So kunlong serie di ke chambore duas tambagi nangla dene nipa denso nangla kelenya da ho ke chesha da hore duas.
다 단다 되지 다또 야 소설 되게로 내가 가는데 가르쳐도 제가 이거도 다 그냥 되지 가지 뭐 왔어도.
So Geshe says yes, and he also said that, you know, these sutras were spoken for our benefit. So as we explore different commentaries and ways of explaining them, we have to see which one makes sense to us personally, right? Which one is the most beneficial for our mind?
Beautiful. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome, Diana. No, thank you for that. And thank you, for citing the text, because I'm also going to go and look at this because I'm curious now.
된다 선바도 니질 초와 추르도 요나 데트페도 요 말에 다와 디가.
It's a big one. It's thick.
다와 당기 다도 거 아니요도 왔어. 선바도 니질 초와 추르도 기리지 용거 요래서. 다와 데트페 다와 노다 노도 요래.
So Geshe said one way of seeing whether your way of discerning a view is working or not, some of those views will actually cause the person's love and compassion and feeling of connection to sentient beings to diminish. So if the wisdom that you're cultivating is causing you to do that, that's a sign you're going in the wrong direction.
So
Yes.
Yeah. So that's
And
one
it's
of
like, the other thing that I asked another question once, and I'll be real quick, is that I think part of it too is that if you get to the point where you experience the perfection of wisdom, and then you think there's a part of your mind that says, oh, wow, aren't I cool that I could come up with that? Then that's keep that empty too, right? It's like keeping the antidote empty.
So Cherabgi Parchin Toson Samlotana, then it's something, nga yabuchi grace, nga chikdapo koso, then it di tangzin younger gichoka drogo gire duas, di amebaso grace. Che papodi, gomjagindi.
때문에 그 말was. 그잖아 고자키도 요아레스 가디기라 요아피숑 도카로와.
Di apoyores, nyapuchik topsons di hako gire.
Yeah.
Ale. So Geshe, I don't think that Geshe would express it as like, how cool am I that I realized? But actually, when you have that realization of emptiness, he said that it is a good thing to have that confidence, to think, oh, I've understood something really important, or I've done something really good. He would say that's a good thing, actually. Because not only that, you need to have confidence in what you understood so that on the basis of that, you can improve and improve and improve, actually.
Like Vajra pride.
Dorje gingagel rwa lai ngagel da wuchi rwa.
Ya la ta tedo ngajaru mardas. Ya la ngajasana la yi somba tembo te se yaro.
Yes, and so Geshe said also remember that divine pride in the tantric context, it's not like pride in the ordinary way we'd understand it. It's more like confidence, right? Confidence that I really am the deity. So it's also confidence here that we need.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Taina.
Yeah.
And I think Dave is next. Dave, go ahead.
I think Annie was before me.
Annie, go ahead. Sorry. Annie, go ahead. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Mine was actually similar to B's about form is empty and emptiness is form. For me, it really hit me hard, and like almost revelatory, that form is empty is the ultimate truth. And emptiness is form is the relative truth. It made me think in terms of being a translator, that is the ni in Tongpa ni, making it into a noun, so that we tend in the relative truth wanting to make things inherently existent, and then when it is empty, it is an adjective in the ultimate truth. I just wanted to see if there was any way that for once the English actually seemed to reflect the quality of the Tibetan.
So I just want to confirm with you, Annie. So you're saying that tompa ni is a mingsik, is a noun.
Yes.
And which one are you saying is the adjective? Tompa, empty.
Tumpa, yes.
Okay, right. Okay, yeah. Okay, I got your question.
Okay.
Dene su tompao tompa ni su sojo narwa. Dene su tompao sena nganso dundam dempa kogires. Tompa ni su so kunsob dempa koju chikyores. Dene dela tene halepe kanis selpo dapo chasons. Dene yang ni seriadi nganso ni tompa jana dene mingsik dapo chagires. Ane tompa ni mena dene gensik dapo chagires. And so, Annie, in your mind, what's the significance of one being a noun and one being an adjective?
The significance for me was that if Tongpa is ultimate truth, then it keeps you from wanting to reify something into a noun.
Ale, dene tompa gensik yana rwa dundang dempa yana dene kandesa gure tets tempo soya mingsik chala dapo soya kojogi duas.
야, 된다 니 세아티가 과자 과바 좀
Ale.
과바 지보 메가 지보 지고 요아레스.
So the function of the ni is actually to kind of negate that object of negation. Gagja mebasoya.
과자 메바 지보 지고 요아레스.
It's so that emptiness, the ness is there only for the purpose of helping us to kind of point at, to counteract that object of negation.
Okay.
그래서 페나 니냐 돈바니 주소 잘라바이나 루지 메비 주라고 지고 그거 하레스.
Tompani susos, emptiness is form. We can understand that once again as that which lacks inherent existence is form.
돈바니 지보 라바이나 돈바니 지보 잘라바이나 주세 고토야 요 말레스. 된다. 니사 치티.
Ni dene?
돈바니 잘라바이나
Yeah.
주세 고치 하고야 요 말레스.
Ale.
니사 치티.
It's on the basis of the ni or the ness in English.
Yes.
That helps us come to this conclusion that form cannot be understood as the thing that it's empty of. It has to be empty of that inherent existence. So that ni particle, that ness particle points to that.
Yeah, that was revelatory to me, actually. And then so for the two truths in the subsequent two lines, is that also going back and forth and between the two ultimate, one of them is the ultimate truth and the other one is the
So sorry, before we get to that, Geshe he wants to say one more thing. But I'll remember. Yeah. That form which is lack. Yeah. That lack of inherently existent form, if we say it like that, the lacking of inherent existence form. Rangshingi mepagi suk di. If we talk about the form which lacks inherent existence, we have to talk about it as empty. We cannot add that ness or that ni particle to it because that would create confusion.
Yes, okay, yeah.
Yeah. So this can help to clarify things. Then it quote
tumba ni za tumba sana kazo demba yung chung diwas.
So within the word empty, there is still space, kunzob denpa yong tugiris. There's still space for a relative truth.
Okay.
Tumba ni di kunzob denpa yong
kazo demba charge yenda kasa tene ma
within the word emptiness, there is no space for that relative truth at all. So that's what the ni is doing. It changes how the word is functioning.
Wow, that's brilliant. Okay, thank you.
Sule tompa ni jema yin tompa ni le kyang su jema yin no sti kunzob denpa dang. And you're absolutely correct about that distinction between the relative and the ultimate being in form is empty, emptiness is form, and that also expressed in emptiness is not other than form, form is not emptiness. That's almost yeah. So sorry, I was because I didn't get to finish the So but when you look at an object, sorry, it's like a lot today. Rory's brain is exhausted. So when you look at the plant, right, the plant's relative truth and the plant's ultimate truth are of one entity, right? The relative truth and the ultimate truth are both kind of within that plant. They're not separate entities. You couldn't talk of one plant that is relative truth and one plant that is ultimate. So that's true actually of any phenomena whatsoever, right? That it has that within its nature are both ultimate and relative truth, right? They're not separate.
Yes, yeah. And that's why you have to have the four. Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Exactly,
and that's why it's said to be the very essence of the meaning. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's brilliant.
Dave, did you have something to?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so there's two questions on social media.
Sure.
So the first one is back up. Here we go. Does the principle that nothing arises independently only apply to life on this earth, or is it a universal absolute knowledge? And subsequent, for example, this notion does not exist in the Christian faith, for example, or in the Muslim faith, etc., and their pure areas are outside of the earth. So
what areas outside of the I was following Christian and Muslim, but then last part
I guess so the question is, does the principle that nothing arises independently only apply to life on this earth, or is it a universal absolute knowledge? And the example where this might not be universal is Christian, Muslim areas of belief or residences that are outside of this earth.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, I think I got it. I'll do my best. Nanso netsu kariyana rwa ngopa ngopo chu kariyana yang tenchung matok rangshingi drupa yomares ranging une drupa yomares rwa di zamboling di gi neluk tartuk ngune netsu chikpore bes di jigden kawayona sacha kawayona
Only the Kawayina chicken.
Karin sena konso yang la so yishu dan kache di kelengyo mare wa chik yeres uzu yagitua.
Yeah, that's a Karina res.
Ganzo di dembo mares da wuchi lamna tigi.
Tateramala Kamaras Kensa did that like a Chikarina, Kadina Takares.
Yes.
Kumba to Tenjunji. Akosarawa, Tanjira Mato.
Yeah.
Sunjipana, Mapena, Teres, Sunji that Michibares.
So Geshe said that whether the Buddha came and said this or not wouldn't change it as the nature of reality. So his answer to that question is that things arising dependently everything being dependent arisings, things lacking inherent existence. This is simply the way things are, whether the Buddha had stated it or not. And so it's something that we would hold in all cases, in all worlds, in all universes.
It's
just the final mode of abiding of any object. In other words, the most profound understanding of how that thing really is. It's natural.
So
Geshe said that in this way, it's not a sectarian consideration. It's not a religious belief. It's simply an understanding of what is. And interestingly, science is coming closer and closer to this, isn't it? Because as soon as they think they found one pinpointable thing, it breaks down and it breaks down and it breaks down.
This one, so
those 4 lines and the 4 things that we were talking about, this applies to every phenomena, right? Regardless of like any belief or dogma or whatever, it's just what is. Any person, anything, any phenomena, any object, this holds. Was that the 2 questions as one, Dave?
No, that was one question.
Okay, yeah.
Second question, and then I have a 3rd question.
Okay.
So, second question is, with form is empty, could we also say subject is empty? With form is empty, could we also say subject is empty, and object is empty? And that's where non-duality comes in because they're both empty.
Right. Nganso su tompao tompani su so samlo tangna dene yul tompares yulchen yang tompares ane yuldang yulchen niga tompa yimpa hakona dene nganso di ni megi tawa dapo drogire des.
Yeah. Ni me tawa se no ni me tawa se to me tawa la ni me tawa ko ya jiwa te mares tanda.
Di mares.
Ni ta matsani kal ko chur ya tawa ya ni me tawa yung chur.
Yes, so yes, you could talk about this as being an understanding of non-duality. That's correct. The emptiness of the subject and the object, or we would say yuldang yulchen, the object and the object possessor in Buddhist jargon. Object possessor is the subject. So yes. But Geshe said there's understandings of that term non-duality, how it would be understood in like a Chitta mantra, a mind-only perspective, or here. But yes, the answer to the question is yes. We can leave it there for now.
Great. And so
Dave, your question.
Yeah, so the question I had was regarding to the discussion on tompa ni with emptiness. So the absence of the ni is pointing towards the emptiness of emptiness. Is that correct?
Nganso tompa dang tompa ni di yorerwa nigi netso di nigi netso tompa nigi tompa samlotang na digirebes. Yes, you could understand from that angle. Yes. Yes. The emptiness of the empty or the emptiness of emptiness. You could understand it both ways. And also, the I being empty of inherent existence is emptiness. It's another angle. That I being empty of inherent existence is emptiness. So I lacking inherent existence is emptiness. The not inherently existent I is not emptiness, it is empty.
Yes.
Yeah. So Geshe said it's like you have to say those back and forth again and again, and it kind of becomes clear. Yeah. So in the absence of further questions, shall we leave it here? He says Kendrup's freaking out. No, it's not. I need to use the facilities. I'm not sure how to say it politely. So thank you so much, everybody. It was a lot of fun, and maybe we'll see you next Sunday.
Bye.
Thank you, thank you.
야, 다시 되네, 강가. 야, 강가 다시 되네, 기모.